Very excited to have you here. Would just ask you to put your phones on vibrate or silence, just so we don't interrupt presentations. If you're not familiar, bathrooms are just down the hallway. And if you didn't have a chance, we have a swag booth out front with some goodies. A lot of materials from our presenters are there, a couple of general materials from the city's office, and we have some cookies if you want a cookie. But yeah, I think we'll get started. So again, thank you for being here. My name is Doria Estrada. I am the Sustainability Manager with the City of Tacoma Park. And it is a real pleasure to be your MC for this event this evening. We're just coming off of a very busy evening, afternoon, evening of a couple different solar-related events. If you weren't aware, we had a flip the switch ceremony for the new solar panels on top of the Tacoma Library. Very exciting. This was funded by a grant we received from Maryland Energy Administration. And we also had a home tour visit with a resident who went solar, who will be on our panel later. So thanks if you were taking part in any of those events. So before we get started, I just wanted to see, I know we've got a lot of people in the online space, but we've also got some folks in the room. So maybe for the folks in the room, quick show of hands, who here is already a solar adopter but is here to learn more and expand their knowledge? Okay, a fair amount, excellent. And who here is a novice on the solar topic and is just looking to get some basic information? Okay, great. And who's somewhere in the middle and you're looking for some tangible next steps? Yes. Awesome. Okay, great. So we have a little bit of everybody, and that's wonderful. I think that we will be able to fulfill a lot of questions across that spectrum tonight with the variety of presentations. Very happy to have you all join us, no matter where you are in your solar journey. I think I covered housekeeping. We're going to have a series of presenters who I will introduce. We will have time for just a couple questions after they end. We're on a little bit of a tight agenda. If we don't get to your question after the particular presenter, please hold it because we will have a more extensive Q&A at the end of the session. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded and live streamed by our lovely folks from City TV. So if we're going too fast or you need something repeated, you can always go back and watch it later. And for anyone that just came in, there is a note sheet. Like I said, we have a lot of terminology when we talk about solar, and if you're new to the topic, that might just be a helpful guide for you. Okay. All right, so without further ado, I am going to welcome our first, I'm sorry, I have to give a little context first. Oh, hello, come on in. I will just give you a little bit of context about where we're at with solar in Tacoma Park. And maybe just as a disclaimer first, this event is being hosted by the city and our sustainability office. This is for education purposes only. We are not endorsing any private company or service, and it is for you to make that decision. So just wanted to, like I said, set some context about where we're at with solar in Tacoma Park. If we have most residents in the room, I know we might have a couple guests, so also welcome. This event is not just for residents, even though it's called Go Solar TKPK. We have a really excellent track record of solar adoption on rooftops and also with community solar subscriptions in the city. Really proud to report that we have over 480 households with rooftop solar, which has been a 28% increase since 2024. That's incredible. We have at least 16 commercial buildings still out on a final count for a few of those with solar installations. And we have over 200 households, probably more, who are subscribing to community solar. So woohoo, this is amazing. And it's a really important step that I think our residents and small businesses are taking. And this is that project that I was mentioning we just had a little party for this evening. In 2024, we received a $125,000 grant from Maryland Energy Administration from the Public Facilities Solar Grant. And this was to install panels that the city would own on top of the new library. We did at the time have to wait for the library to finish being constructed. So even though we received the grant in 2024, we were a little delayed in implementing the system. But it just got finished, and we just got the final permit, and we're extremely excited about this. The fact that we own this system is a huge deal in terms of us having access to the renewable energy certificates and really generating clean renewable energy on site. We, as some of you might know, also have a power purchase agreement from a system that was installed in 2011 on top of this building. So it's a pretty cool opportunity for us to now have both systems in place and be benefiting from solar generated from those two systems. And so some specs about that system that was just finalized. It's producing just, a 72.5 kilowatt system, 117 panels, offsetting just shy of 60 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, and producing over 98,000 kilowatt hours per year. We get this question a lot. It's not enough to cover the library's full energy use, unfortunately, but it is a significant portion that it's going to offset. And for the portion that it's not covering, we do subscribe to RECs from other clean energy sources. So, hold on, I will get to you in just a minute. But yes, I just wanted to spotlight that we really feel like the city has been a leader. We try to walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to solar. You know, we are just really thrilled about the progress of that project, but we can't stop there, and that's what this event is about tonight. We really want to make sure that solar is accessible for everyone. There's been some new updates with the legislature this year that we're going to have a speaker highlight that I think is going to open that up even more. But let's start with one of our friends of the city. So I now have the pleasure of introducing Sukrit Mishra from Solar United Neighbors, who we collaborate with quite a bit. I think this is your third time attending this event, so thank you for coming back again. Sukrit plays a pivotal role in advancing solar initiatives across the Mid-Atlantic region with Solar United Neighbors. His passion for sustainability fuels his dedication to educating communities about solar energy, empowering residents to make greener choices. As the Switch Together program director, he's responsible for expanding solar adoption by connecting residents with vetted installers and facilitating a smooth transition to clean energy. Please join me in welcoming him.
Okay, thank you for that, Dory, and always a pleasure to be here. And good evening, everyone. As Dory said, my name is Sukrit Mishra. I'm the DC and Maryland program lead for the Switch Together program at Solar United Neighbors. Solar United Neighbors, also known as SUN, is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're based in DC. We have 12 other chapters nationwide, and our mission is simple. And I'll get more into those details. Tonight, my goals are simple. For folks looking to go solar, I'll give you a quick spiel on Switch Together, our group purchase program. For folks who already have solar, I can't really go into more of the technical details that I usually do, but I'm happy to stick around and answer any maintenance-related questions. And for folks who do not qualify for this program, I hope to connect you with other folks in the industry. And I know it's a packed agenda, so I will get on with it. For starters, like I said, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are vendor neutral. Even in our programs, when we do the auction and pick installers, we have a very strict and rigid criteria. When folks reach out to our help desk and ask for specific recommendations, we just give the technical details, but we leave it to the customer to pick the installer or vendor or option of their choice. In terms of our impact, we were founded as a startup back in 2007. This was down in DC in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. And since then, we have expanded, as I said, to 12 other states, as well as DC and Puerto Rico. Over that time, over the past 2 decades, we have had more than 12,000 families go solar with us. This also includes small businesses and nonprofits in the area who have gone solar with us. And if you're an engineer or a geek like me, that translates to around 105 megawatts of rooftop solar. So yeah, in short, we have come a long way. And as I said, our organization was founded by Anya, who herself lives in Mount Pleasant. As of 2026, we have members across all 50 states. And what that basically means is we do have a national help desk, and anytime we get questions from both members and non members, we are not picking anyone above the other. We offer pro bono consulting on anything and everything around clean energy. If folks are looking for vendor recommendations, we have a resource base. If they have maintenance related questions, if they were a co-op member, they have warranties that they can apply to themselves. If they're not in our programs, we give them the best guidance possible pro bono. And beyond that, we do a lot of policy work. So anything around net metering, SRECs, expanding access to solar beyond HOAs and other utility regulations, we do a lot of work in that domain. And before I get into Switch Together, our theory of change is simple. It's triple faceted. Number one, helping people go solar. If they're a good fit for Switch Together, great. If they find a better package outside our program, that's also okay. 95% of our funding and money comes from restricted and unrestricted grants and donations. So these programs, as you know, while we want people to go solar, that's not what keeps the lights on. Most of the money comes from elsewhere. Number two, joining together, whether it's in our co-ops, whether it's in our happy hours, solar 101s, webinars, educational sessions, we do a ton of that. And the last part is, like I said, we do a lot of policy work. So even last year, when when the ITCs or tax credits were going away, even though we did fight a good fight, we presented our case strongly at the federal level. That was among the many other battles or work we did, and that's also something we do. And I'll get on to the first thing, which is Switch Together. Some folks may know about this, some folks may not, so I'll just give you a quick preview. In a nutshell, it's a bulk purchase campaign. I call it the Costco model, where we bulk people up in a specific neighborhood, ward, county, muni, city, what have you. Once we hit critical mass, which is around 50 to 100 members, we help them pick an installer. And beyond that, once they go solar, if they have questions about their warranties or any other options, that's where the help desk steps in. We used to run co-ops until 2023. In a good year, we would have around 300 or 400 folks signing up for the program in Maryland. Across the region, in DC and Northern Virginia included, that would be 700 folks. And it was a great program. After 2023, we co-branded it with another company and called it Switch Together. And in the last 3 years, we have had more than 10,000 people sign up for this program, and of whom almost, I would say, 2,000 people have gone solar with us. And the two big obvious benefits are, number one, folks who go solar in this program, because of the bulk purchase discount, save anywhere from 15 to 25% going solar with us. But that's not the biggest reason people go solar in this program. The other big benefit is solar is my daytime job. I understand how complicated, technical, and convoluted it can be. I know folks got to get a lot of door-to-door canvassers and sales reps. It is a complicated process. There's also that trust required when you have a lot of vendors reaching out to you. And we try to demystify and make our the whole process as simple as possible. And as I said, these are the benefits. Beyond the discount, these installers that participate in the program are pre-vetted. We ensure they have a good track record. We look for some basics, such as being in the industry for at least a decade, if not more. We ask them to pay a deposit of around $60,000 before they even bid on the program. So there are a lot of prerequisites before they can even join this program or even submit their RFP during the auction. And the last thing I'll add is these systems run for 25 to 30 years with their warranty. The best thing about solar panels, both rooftop and ground mounted, once they're installed, they require minimal maintenance. But if you do run into any hiccups like any other technical devices, we have a help desk. You can reach out. We facilitate and act as a liaison between you and the installer, and we get that work done. I will not go into the details of these numbers. You've had a long day, but this is what the numbers look like since 2023. Like I said, we have had more than 13,000 people sign up for this program. in terms of signed contracts, somewhere around 1,900, and a few hundred of them are still awaiting PTO or interconnection permits, but that's how the numbers stack up. I often get the question as to why the signed contracts are so much lower than people signing up. It's like any other big investment. A lot of folks who sign up for these programs, they're just doing their homework, window shopping, they're just curious about learning more. And what usually happens is when they reach out and make a decision, solar is getting cheaper year after year. And so they usually end up waiting for the next year or the year after. And which is fair. It is a big investment. And that's why the numbers look the way they do. In terms of the next steps, I'll just give you a quick preview on what the registration process looks like. It's 4 steps: registering either online or through one of these events, receiving your personal recommendation and paying the deposit, signing your contract and making a decision, and then going solar, getting PTO'd, and getting interconnected. And what I've done is, as an example, this is what you're going to see online. These are snapshots of the website. We try to get as much details as possible about your home or the site which is looking to go solar. So trivial questions around the pitch of the roof, the level of the slope, the material that it is made out of. Most roofs are a good fit for solar, except for slate roofs. That's where they're a bit more fragile. That's where installers may either turn them down or place an adder cost on them. And that's where community solar or ground-mounted systems are a better fit. I won't go into that tangent today because there are other experts here on that front. Questions around the age of the roof. These systems run for 25 years, and the last thing you need is getting it installed and then requiring a roof replacement, because that means the installer comes back, deinstalls it, fixes the roof, installs it again. That's a whole lot more time, and that's not covered in the warranty. So that's another basic question we ask. And there are more questions on the roof size, if there's any roof selection or part of a roof you have in mind. And I won't go into the details today because of, this is a packed agenda. We do have extended webinars online which cover this, but usually south and southeast facing roofs are most ideal. East and west facing roofs are just as good. It's usually the north facing roofs which are not a good fit, because I wouldn't go into the astronomy, but the orientation and all that good stuff. If you're not sure about these answers, you do not have to be an expert. Make an educated guess. You can amend your answers once you pay your deposit. The installer will do a one-on-one consultation with you and let you know the price estimates and if your roof is a good fit. And this is an example of where if you do select a response which might not be a good fit, we try to be as transparent even before you go solar, and we'll let you know if it's not a good candidate. So during the peak sun hours between 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, if you're getting a ton of shade, you're going to get that pop-up message. You can still proceed. You can still have a one-on-one consultation with the installer, but we try to be upfront in terms of the expectations. At the end of the whole registration process, this is the message you get. Then you're prompted to pay a deposit of $150. It's 100% refundable. If you're not satisfied with the experience after this, if you want to opt out or want to wait till next year, just reach out to our help desk. We give back the refund, no questions asked. The reason we have the deposit is, you saw the numbers. In a usual campaign, we get from 1,000 to 2,000 people signing up. We want to pre-vet and qualify good leads for the installers. It is a long list, so we want to make sure they also have a good consultation experience. The latter half of this presentation is more around solar financing. And in short, when I joined the industry back in 2020, even from there, solar has come down a long way. And since 2010 itself, as residential solar has exploded, costs have dropped by almost 70 to 75%. It used to be a niche or luxury item, not anymore. And the return on investment is what makes it so viable. In Maryland, the average payback period on rooftop systems is anywhere from 6 to 8 years. Again, it depends on your system size and your utility consumption and what have you. That's the usual ROI. After the ROI is completed, for the next 2 decades, you're making money out of it. And I'll get into the numbers later. But that's what makes solar so compelling. If you really want to get into the weeds from the installer's perspective, roughly half of their costs are soft costs. That pertains to customer acquisition, marketing, advertising, permitting, and that's what we're eliminating in our Switch Together program. We have the leads ready for them, and that's what incentivizes them to offer discounted rates in the programs and helps you save money going solar with us. And this is just an example of what the average price looks like in Maryland. You see two columns. The smaller system size is on the left. It's around 3.35 kilowatts. A larger system, which is the average system size offsetting 100% of your utility bills in Maryland, is around 7 kilowatts. More specifically, 6.7 kilowatts. In the solar industry, you're not charged by the panels, by the system size or kilowatts. And the average price, if you look at prices online on forums like Energy Sage or any offers you might receive in the open market, the average price is around $2.66 dollars a watt. And so if you multiply that by the system size, you get this number over here. And that's the upfront price. Our prices are around 20 to 25% below that usually. We completed our auction last month. Once you sign up, you'll have more visibility on that stuff. And that's where the SRECs and other stuff come in. I will try to keep it as simple as possible, but the second row there, which is called Solar Renewable Energy Credits or SRECs, this is a production incentive. Once you install a system, once your system starts producing clean energy, for every 1,000 kilowatt hours, you receive a virtual SREC or virtual credit. I know, it is complicated. We do have a financing guide online. It goes more into the details, but this matters because this deducts your cost when it comes to going solar. And for an average system size of around 4 kilowatts on the left, you're making around 4 SRECs or 4 credits. And if you multiply that by the open market rate in Maryland, which is around $50 an SREC, you're making $200 a year. Over 1 year, you're saving around $1,000 on your utility bills versus not going solar. Over a whole system's lifetime, that amount goes up to around 30 grand. Again, this is subject to your utility escalator rates, system size, utility bill, and other factors. But these are the average prices. There are third-party options. Sometimes a roof is not a good fit. Sometimes solar can still be really pricey. And that's where folks are, especially this year, they're opting for 2 other options, which are PPAs and leases. There is the other option of community solar, but I'll leave it to some of my other colleagues who will be getting into the details. The first thing is loans. We do have folks in our programs opting for loans as well. We do have a partnership with the Montgomery County Green Bank, and through the Climate First Bank, we try to pre-vet these financiers just to ensure there are no red flags, people don't get trapped in bad contracts, and if they're income qualified, they can qualify for a lot of these competitive loans through them. But usually, when people reach out to us who are not in our program, the bare minimum we ask is the length of the lease or the loan itself, and we look at the fine print. Because usually what happens is people reach out to our help desk when it's too late, they've locked into a contract. We try to explore legal options, but our arms are also tied at that point. But loans are an option even in our program. PPAs, like the one Dory described for the system she mentioned earlier, that's where you do not own the system. It may be installed on top of your roof on a third-party site, and it's the installer that is maintaining the system. The benefit of having a PPA is there are minimal or nominal upfront costs to a PPA agreement. The maintenance is covered by a third-party developer or installer. The only thing is you're not saving as much as going solar or purchasing a system. You're saving more like maybe 10 or 15% on the utility rates compared to not having a PPA agreement. One of the drawbacks might be the escalator fee. Depending on the lease of the PPA, sometimes in the fine print, the escalator rates or fees might be hidden. You do not want to get trapped in a bad contract. You're welcome to reach out to our help desk. We can look for those red flags and let you know if this is a good deal. And similarly for leases, they run for 15 to 25 years. Similar benefits. It can be a fixed monthly lease. There might be upfront payments. There might be a structure later on. The only drawback would be, again, the escalator fee or the fine print. But something we have seen this year compared to last year, with the ITCs or tax credits gone, more folks are opting for these third-party options than purchasing solar altogether, which is fine. But just be educated, do your homework, reach out to our help desk if you need a second opinion. And I know I'm short on time, but in terms of next steps, if you would like to learn more about Switch Together, that's the website. If you have more questions about PPAs, leases, solar tech, we have tons of material on our website, and I'll be happy to stick around and answer any questions. And yeah, that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this program available for apartment or condo buildings? Just individual homes?
It is just for individual homes, and for apartments or condo buildings, that's where community solar is a better option. We do have a community solar database on our website. So if you enter your zip code or state over there, you're going to find all the active community solar providers. And once you reach out to them, they'll give you a proposal. If you need us to review the proposal, I should have added this. We review up to 5 proposals per customer, free of charge. So if you need a second opinion on that proposal, wherever you get it from, we're happy to review it. But again, we have an active database on our website, and I brought some flyers. I'm happy to share them with you after the presentation.
Thank you so much, Sukrit. I think that question was a great segue. I just wanted to highlight, I hope everyone caught when he said that people are saving around 15% through this program. That is huge. So yeah, glad that you can stick around because I think folks might be approaching you after. And yes, if you do have a question, if you could approach the mics, we do have some people in the online space, so they won't be able to hear your question unless you're talking into the mic. But let's keep things moving. So yeah, what do you do if you live in an apartment building or you don't have a roof that's suitable for solar? That is where community solar comes in. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Natalia Franco. Natalia is an environmental engineer passionate about reducing greenhouse gas emissions through clean energy initiatives. She's helped enroll over 1,800 households to the community solar program so far, which supports the annual generation of 21 million kilowatt hours of solar energy. Natalia is currently a program manager at Neighborhood Sun. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Okay, let's see. Okay, my name is Natalia, and I work for Neighborhood Sun. We are a local company from based in North Bethesda here in Maryland, and we only work with community solar projects. I'm going to explain what that means. Who of you have heard about community solar before? Good. And are any of you subscribed with Neighborhood Sun? Oh, good. I'm subscribed to, yeah. Okay, so like we were saying, if you can't or you don't want to install panels on your roof, because I have spoken to people who think panels are ugly and they don't want them in the roof, which is fair. You can instead subscribe to a local solar project to get support clean energy generation in the state and also save some money on your bill. So the community solar program was passed by a bill back in 2016. They, passed the bill to have a pilot program for 7 years, and then back in 2023, they made it a permanent program. They also decided that 40% of the projects should be focused on low and moderate income households, and they approved consolidated billing for this program, which is a huge deal, and it was implemented this year. So I'm going to talk more about it later in the presentation. So the Maryland Community Solar Project, I mean, right now we have projects basically with all the utilities here in Maryland. So it works for Pepco customers, BG&E customers, Potomac Edison customers, and Delmarva Power customers. So how does it work? So basically, community solar allows residents to subscribe to a local solar project at no cost, and then it's like they're selling that energy back to their utility. So just like when someone has panels on their roof, you can sell the excess of energy back to their utility, and they pay you back with credits on your bill, right? So this works exactly the same way, but you don't have the panels on your roof. So the energy that you subscribe to at the solar farm goes to the utility under your name, and then you get paid for that energy with credits on your bill. So the solar farm basically generates 90% of your annual energy usage. So when you subscribe, we look at your usage from your bill or through the utility, and based on that number, we assign you a percentage of the solar farm generation that is going to cover 90% of your energy in a year. The energy generation is going to change throughout the year. So during the summer months, it's going to generate more energy. So you'll see more credits on your bill. And then during the winter months, it's the opposite. So you get less credits and less savings on your bill. But overall, in a year, you should get 90% of the energy in credits on your bill, and then you get a discount on those credits that you are getting. Net metering is basically selling the energy back to the utility. So like I was saying, in community solar is the same concept, but the panels are not on your roof. You're just subscribed to a local solar project that generates that energy on your behalf. So this is how the credits look, for example, on your Pepco bill, although right now with consolidated billing, it's a little bit different. But you will see a negative balance on your bill for the credits. And right now with consolidated billing, you see the discount applied on those credits directly on your bill, which is great because it makes things a lot easier, and I'll explain why later. So do you need to own a home to participate? No, this is for everyone. And I think that's why they came up with this solution, because 80% of the residents cannot have panels on the roof because they rent or live in apartments, or they have too many trees around their house, or they need to change the roof first to have panels. So this is a way that everyone that pays a utility bill can participate on can help generate solar energy and sell it back to the utility. So you don't need to install panels on your roof. Like I said, the panels are on a solar farm, and you don't have to pay anything, like no panel installation or maintenance or anything. Is there any sign up or cancellation fees? No, it's free to enroll, and there are no upfront costs, and you can also cancel your subscription anytime, and there is no cancellation fee. The only requirement, if you need to cancel, for example, if you're moving to a different state, we need a 2-month notice, because that's how long it takes for the utility to process that cancellation, because the utility is only receiving information about who's subscribing and who's canceling once a month. So we send them, for example, the information this month, and then they process the cancellation for the next month. So we just need a couple of months to make sure that you're not receiving credits anymore. Can I enroll in community solar if I have solar panels installed on my roof? Yes, you can. So if your panels generate only part of your energy, then the other part that you're still getting from the utility, you can subscribe to the community solar program. The only times that I don't recommend doing that is if your panels are generating like 90 or more of your energy, because then I feel like it's too much of a hassle to get too little, savings on your bill. But you can do it anyway. So how much will community solar save you? It depends on, obviously, on your energy usage, but it also depends on the discount that you subscribe for. So usually there's a standard discount. There is a 10% discount for everyone. So it should save you around like one bill per year. And then for income qualified residents, they can get a 20 or 25% discount on those credits, which should save them like two or a little bit more monthly bills per year. This is the qualification for the higher discount. So it's based on how many people live in your household and the gross household income. And for clarification, the discount that you get on the credits, it's not coming from the utilities. It's coming from the solar farm. So in this case, PEPCO pays the residents for the energy that is generated at the solar farm every month. And then that energy that is generated by the solar farm has a 10% or 20% discount depending on what you qualify for. So consolidated billing is a huge deal. It was implemented this year for like most of the projects. Some projects are still transitioning to consolidated billing. So what consolidated billing means is that all the utilities in Maryland have to include everything on their bill. And I'll explain why that's different from how it was. So before, you would get credits, for example, here on your January bill, reducing your PEPCO bill that month, and then the following month, you would need to pay for those credits back to the solar farm with the discount that you get. So for example, if you get a PEPCO bill for $100 and you got solar credits for minus 90, then you would pay PEPCO $10 that month. And then the following month, you would get an invoice from us to pay for those credits back with the 10% discount. So you would pay $81 back, saving you $9 that month. So consolidated billing is huge because it takes away, the need of having a separate invoice for the credits because everything is on your PEPCO bill. So you just get your PEPCO bill for like $100. You get community solar credits for 90, and then they call it a subscription fee. Is what you were paying to the solar farm a month later. It's included on your bill, so they call it a subscription fee for 81, which means you will see on your bill the $9 savings total. So it's a lot easier to subscribe. It's a lot easier for everyone. Yeah. So $9, a month doesn't sound like much, but when you're subscribed, for years, which is the case for some people, in Maryland, for example, that have been subscribed since we started back in 2017, it accumulates. So this is an example of my account. Scott is my husband. And then, we've been subscribed for I think 2 years, and we've saved $200 so far. So it might not sound like much, but I would prefer to save $200 in 2 years than paying that to the utility. And on top of that, I'm supporting clean energy generations, so it's great. So will you continue to receive a bill from your utility? Yes, you continue to receive a bill from your utility, but you will see the changes. You will see a section specifically for community solar credits and the discount. And also, in this case, you're not changing your supply arrangement with PEPCO. So PEPCO is still responsible to supply your energy. You're just at the same time, you're selling energy back to PEPCO. It's just like they're selling you energy and you're selling energy back, and then you pay the difference. So what do you need to subscribe? You just need to have your PEPCO bill handy. You need to provide your contact information. You need to provide your PEPCO bill information. We need you to upload a PEPCO bill because your usage is on your bill, and that is faster than waiting for PEPCO to share your usage with us, and then you agree to the terms and sign, and that's it. So if you are interested in learning more or starting your subscription, you can scan this QR code, and it will take you to the form. So if you fill out the first part of the form with the contact information, I will reach out to you to answer any questions and help you with the process. But it's very simple to subscribe. So what is Neighborhood Sun? We are a subscriber organization based in North Bethesda, Maryland. We are basically intermediaries between the utilities, the residents, and the solar farms, and we just help make the process a lot easier for everyone. So something that we hear often is that this sounds too good to be true. And why isn't everyone subscribed already? But I mean, I think it's mostly because the utilities don't really promote this program to everyone. So it's mostly on us, and then word of mouth from like residents who are already subscribed to the program when they tell their family members or neighbors. So yeah. And why is this program important? Like I was saying, because 80% of the residents cannot have rooftop panels, so this is a great alternative for them. Again, if you want to subscribe, you can take a picture or scan the QR code. These are the projects that we have right now for Pepco customers, but we have in different utilities as well. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Renata Coe. I already subscribe to Community Solar and have solar panels. Two questions. One is, can you subscribe to multiple projects? And the second one is, I'm trying to convince my employer to subscribe to Community Solars. Can organizations be part of this, or is this limited to residents?
Okay. Sorry, what was the first question? Oh, yeah. So actually, Maryland does allow people to have multiple subscriptions. But I mean, it's kind of tricky because then you're generating more credits. I mean, you have to watch out that you're not generating more credits than what you're using at home, right? Otherwise, you'll be paying for extra energy that you don't really need. So usually, if someone subscribes through us and they are already subscribed with a different company, we don't process that subscription because they are already, subscribed to the program. So we prefer not to over-generate credits for them. But I think you can do it. And the second one is if an organization can subscribe. So it's kind of limited, honestly, to subscribe like a commercial account because it's mostly for residential ones. But in some cases, sometimes some projects allow commercial accounts to enroll. We've done it mainly with like churches who are helping, their community members subscribe. So the solar farm owners kind of like agree to subscribe the church account because they're bringing other people, or like more residents to the solar farm. But it is very limited. But if you want, we do have a wait list. So if you share a bill with us, then we will add it to the wait list. And when we have capacity for commercial accounts, then we will process those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. She confirmed she's able to stay until the end. So again, I know that was a lot of content, but you can approach her after with questions. We'll keep it moving on a fairly new and exciting topic. Mark, are you online? Can you hear us? Bear with us. Hello. Okay, wonderful. We'll have your presentation pulled up in just a moment. But yeah, just wanted to set some context here. So some of you might be aware of the big news that came out of the Maryland State Legislative Session, that our state is now part of only a handful of states that has legalized balcony solar, aka plug-in solar. In terms of equity, this is a huge deal in accessibility for solar. And Mark is the Director of Development at Bright Saver, which is a nonprofit founded in 2024 that brings easy to install, affordable plug-in or balcony solar panels to U.S. residents, particularly renters and those in apartments, helping them to reduce electricity bills and access clean energy. He's an internationalist with over a decade of experience in public policy, international development, and humanitarian assistance across environmental and migration spheres. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, and hello. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. Can everybody hear me okay? I think okay, we're good. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for this invitation, for the opportunity to speak to everyone in Maryland and honestly the DMV area on this exciting technology and why this is timely, of course, is this bill. We are at a point now where we have gotten rid of some of the regulatory barriers that make this technology easy and affordable to access. And I want to thank everybody who presented first, because I think we have a good overview of other solar technologies, and kind of the way we see it is this is a new solar technology for the US. It's not new across the world, but it's a new opportunity to increase access to clean energy to complement efforts on rooftop and community solar access across the board. So just confirming my slides are up, so I'll go ahead. I can only see myself, so.
Yeah, we don't see your slides, so give us 1 second. I'll pull it up.
Okay, no worries. I think I'll start in the meantime with just saying Bright Saver is a very new startup tech nonprofit focused on plug-in solar, but we were in the right place at the right time, and basically this movement has taken off. And yes, Maryland is joining now a cohort of states that are passing legislation to make accessing plug-in solar easier, more affordable. But right now, as of May 7th today, we have 35 bills. We have 35 states that have presented legislation, in addition to Washington, D.C., that is about making plug-in solar accessible in the U.S. And so this has been one of the fastest moving clean energy movements we've seen. And our vision is that we want every single person in the United States to be able to access solar, adding to the technologies that were already presented. And this isn't just a pie in the sky. This isn't just a pipe dream. This is actually a reality. And all of this started actually in Germany about 10 years ago. This technology isn't new, but in Germany, now today, there are approximately 4 million households that have installed plug-in solar systems, which is equivalent to approximately 1 in 10 German households. And so at Bright Saver, we think if the same market conditions exist in the United States and we see the same dynamics, that we will see as many as 1 in 6 households in the US that have plug-in solar over the next 10 years. So really looking at democratizing solar in a way that we have never been able to do. And while we are based in the Bay Area, as was mentioned, we are a national organization. We have supported the law in Maryland and across the US, and we are working also on deployment. So in addition to passing enabling legislation, educating policymakers, educating the general public, we are also helping enable the market by working with manufacturers on ways to reduce barriers, and we're also actually deploying systems. So we are running a pilot in the Bay Area to deploy the first 1,000 plug-in solar systems in the US. And if you press next again, I think the second line of text will come up. Sorry, there's a transition there. So what is plug-in solar? I think that's the big question to start with. Generally, these are very small, portable, and easy to use kits. They were about 5 to 10 times smaller than a rooftop array. They're typically around 1,200 watts. So these are pretty small, around 2 to 4 panel systems. And instead of putting these on your roof, you plug them in on a balcony, terrace, or backyard. And the difference is, with a traditional rooftop system, you would need to hardwire that system through a complex installation process to your breaker panel. Actually, could you go back still? And that usually takes a little bit more time and increases soft costs from installation. And then the other difference, of course, is that with plug-in solar, you plug it into an external outlet and it works sort of like an appliance in reverse. So if you plug it into an outlet in your garden, then the power goes back through that circuit to your breaker panel, and then the power is distributed through your home. And before your appliances and everything else that uses energy in your home will take from the panels first before it takes from the grid. So then your the amount of electricity you use from the grid is reduced. And a frequent question that we get is this only for first-time solar users? And that's not the case, actually. The great thing about plug-in solar is that it has a use case both in homes that have never had rooftop solar before, and it also can be used in homes with rooftop solar. And in fact, in California now, the pilot we are running is to deploy these while the legislation is passed is focused on actually expanding people's existing solar capacity by adding plug-in solar to their homes. And so this is a great use case for a lot of people who live in homes, people who live in apartments that don't have roofs, people who don't want to pay to replace a roof, as we mentioned. And one of the added benefits is that this plug-in solar system kind of is a go-between between a full off-grid system and one that's traditionally grid tied, like a rooftop system, because when you pair it with a battery, they can actually provide you with some electricity during outages. So if you pair this with a 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt hour battery, then you can then plug appliances directly into it or run an extension cord out to this battery, and you can power your Wi-Fi, charge your phone, and even run potentially a small refrigerator or medical devices while the power is down. So in addition to the savings, there's also this resiliency component. And currently in the US, because this is a new technology, there's not a lot of manufacturers selling this. The prices are higher, but what we expect in the US to see is that we get to price points as low as in Europe. And right now, these systems are selling for $500 to $600. And so it's definitely a great gateway entry point into the clean energy sphere for people who haven't accessed it before. We always say, I mean, if you can afford a rooftop system or you're able to install one, that's great. And that's probably, we would say, go for it, do it, because you will obviously offset a lot more electricity with a full rooftop system. A better way to think about plug-in solar is it really is like an appliance. It's like another energy efficiency appliance, like a window heat pump or anything else that you would install to help bring your bills down a bit using cleaner technology. So that's a bit of what plug-in solar is. Next slide, please. Yeah, and just some photos of what this is looking like in Germany, balcony solar. I mean, you can walk around a lot of cities in Germany now and see these, and that's kind of what we were inspired by. And as I mentioned, this is completely DIY in Germany and plug and play. So you go to your hardware store, or you go to an IKEA, you pay for one of these systems and bring it home, and it's kind of like setting up IKEA furniture. And so this is also the vision that we have for this in the United States eventually. Next slide. And you can see sort of the uptake. So what has really contributed to this over the last 4 years has really been the massive increase in systems in Germany. And what really set this in motion wasn't complex subsidies. It wasn't governments having to create tax credits. It was deregulation. So the first thing that the German government did was that they passed a law in 2020 that exempted these small systems from any rules from your utility. So you didn't have to have an agreement signed with your utility anymore. You didn't have to enter in a net metering agreement. You didn't have to get an inspection. And that is what started making this technology turn from a bit of a niche thing to mainstream. And then what really set this off, in addition to just solar prices going down astronomically over the last few years, was an additional legislative piece in Germany that blocked landlords from from blocking people from installing these. So those two pieces of legislation have not required any investment from the government, but really what it's done is just deregulate this market so that people can access it with fewer administrative steps and fewer soft costs. And this is kind of what we're doing in the US as well. And this is what the crux of these bills we've been passing are. So next slide. So how does it work? So we already mentioned this in the community solar, rooftop solar context. So in those contexts, you would have an agreement with your utility, you would enter into a net metering program, and in any case that your solar array produced more power than what your home was using, for example, maybe you're not home, you're on vacation, then the excess power from that would go back to the grid and you would be compensated for this. In the case of plug-in solar, and what this legislation is doing in Maryland and other places is that it gets rid of that process. So you can have these solar panels, they plug into what's known as a microinverter, which basically converts the energy that the sun is giving to the solar panels into AC current that your home runs on. You could also have a battery as part of that, and then that plugs into the external outlet. And if this panel produces more than your home is using, then that electricity going back to the grid is just free electricity for the utility. So at this point, that minimum backfeed, what we call it backfeed, is, or electricity back to the grid, is not compensated, but you also don't need to sign anything with the utility. So the utility is a win-win. The utility gets some free electricity maybe, but in all reality, because these systems are so small, we really anticipate that very little electricity to no electricity actually goes back, because your household-based electricity load will likely consume everything that these solar panels are producing, especially if you have a battery. And so this is kind of what this bill is doing, is that it's allowing that minimal backfeed of electricity to the grid without you having to negotiate it with the utility. And it really just makes this process easier for everybody. And this is how it's working in Utah, which was the first state to pass bills. Now it's going to work in like this in Maryland and plenty of the other states. And I'll go in more detail. Next slide. So just so you have an idea of what this is looking like, obviously I showed you some of those photos from the German context. The systems we have been piloting in the Bay Area look more like those on the left-hand side. So they are ground mounted on the side of a house in a backyard. And this is what, mainly we're deploying these now because this is the technology that's available. And these systems on the left-hand side, you do need more space for. They're typically 1 to 4 panels. Up to 1,200 watts, and they are set up there with a mounting kit underneath that keeps it secured to the ground. You have some cables that connect all of the things together, it plugs into the wall, and then all of these systems are accompanied by a smartphone app that you can open up and track the system's production in real time. So you can know exactly how much your system is producing and how performance is, how much sun it's getting, and it's a really good learning experience too, to understand just how all of these things work. Now, on the other hand, some of these smaller systems that are going to be really applicable in more of a apartment or high-rise setting, on the right, these are what's coming to the market now, especially as more states pass legislation. We're actually working with a new system now that we're going to deploy that looks a bit like this. And these are much smaller balcony systems that maybe are a maximum of 250, 360 watts. They're single panels. A lot of these are flexible panels, so they weigh 4 to 6 pounds. You don't need the rigid panels you see on the left-hand side. And because they're smaller, they also produce less energy, but they're a great use case for people who just don't have any other option and they just want to start producing some clean energy at their home and maybe offset their bills a little bit. And this is kind of what we expect to see more and more in the US market as more manufacturers enter, being triggered to do so because these laws are passing. Next slide. So where are we at this legislative progress? 2 states, and actually we have just received word as of today, as of right now, I got a message that Colorado and Connecticut have passed and the governors have signed them into law. So actually, as of right now, there are 4 states where bills have been signed into law: Utah, Maine, Colorado, Connecticut. There are also 3 states where bills have passed both chambers. That includes Maryland, Virginia, and Colorado. Well, Colorado just moved, but Maryland, now it's headed to the governor's desk for signature. So we're already there. And there's 40 states in total across the US where we're working on these efforts to pass this common sense legislation that gets utilities out of the way. And just to go over like what this bill means, I think I've gone in a little bit, but with the next slide, basically, you will not need to alert your utility anymore if you're going to install one of these. You can plug it in. You won't have to have a net metering program. If there is any backfeed to the grid, like I mentioned, it will just go back to the grid without you needing to alert the utility. The utility cannot require you to have inspections of this. But what this law also does, it introduces safety mechanisms. So it also requires that the plug-in solar systems deployed in the state of Maryland have certification from a nationally recognized safety laboratory. And it also ensures that there is no liability to the utility in case there's any incidents with these systems. So it creates this new category and makes this process a lot simpler. And we expect now over the next 12 months that more and more people are going to be able to access these systems, especially when we get new safety certified systems to the market. And I'll go in the next slide, I'll go into more detail on that. So yes, safety. because this is a new technology, there was no safety standard for it in the US prior to December. And also seeing all of the momentum from different states passing these laws, the national laboratory, which is known as Underwriter Laboratories, or UL, which is kind of the main national laboratory that certifies consumer appliances, electronics, etc., finally released a guidance on plug-in solar systems from the US. And the big takeaway from all of this is that it gets rid of this gray area that existed before on whether these were going to be fully compliant with safety regulations. Like, now we have a clear pathway forward. This certification is intentionally very conservative because it's the first time that these systems are being introduced. And so they ensure that plug-in solar, or what is sometimes abbreviated to PIPV, is safe in all possible conditions, even if you have old wiring, and it mitigates any risk of shock to either the user or to utility line workers, any risk of house fires and other structural concerns, and it's fully compliant with other national standards. And so the great news is that now that we have this standard in place, the manufacturers are all updating their systems and submitting systems under this new framework. And the laboratory, UL, has come out on record saying that they are already working with a number of manufacturers on this, and that will be a matter of months before they have now UL certified systems to market. And this is great news because that's kind of the last hurdle, in addition to passing the laws, to seeing this deployed at scale. And one of the other things that is important to note is with these safety certifications, because they want to mitigate to zero risk whatsoever of any shock or house fires, it does mandate that some electrical work is carried out. So one of the things, and I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but one of the things that the Maryland law sets forward is that there's an exemption on all this for really small systems. What does that mean for you? So the systems that I showed that were one panel, very small, those you will be able to go to the store, buy, take it home and plug in, and you won't have to do anything else. This is how it will work under Maryland law. However, if you want a larger system, which will also offset more electricity, you have to anticipate that you may need to hire an electrician. It's very minor junior electrical work that takes an hour or less, but it really is to put in a dedicated circuit where basically it's one electrical circuit connected to your breaker panel that does not share any load with another appliance, to make sure that there's no overloading of wiring, and to switch out an outlet plate because these new safety certified systems will require a special plug. So all this to say, if you want a larger system, you'll probably have to invest in some soft costs for the electrical work at the beginning, but even then, it's still a lot quicker than other processes, and you can still have this up in the same day, but unfortunately it does add some soft costs to that, unless you're installing a very small single panel system that is exempt from those electrical requirements. So that's kind of the one
Mark, we
caveat
might
there.
need to
And
wrap it up in just a minute or so,
Sure.
if you can. Thank you.
yeah, this is actually, I mean, this is kind of where we finished, but basically, when we started, we talked to a lot of manufacturers who said, like, what's it going to take for you to enter the market? And they said, we need these laws to pass in a bunch of states, at least 5. And now what we see this year is we will get those 5 states. And what this will do is unleash a massive entry of products to the US market. And what we estimate is that the prices of these systems will go down astronomically over the next couple of years, just like they did in Europe. And we'll see very low price per kilowatt hours per systems over the next 10 years. Final slide. And what do we think is going to happen? So basically, if everything goes the way that it has in Germany and with the pace that we're seeing in the US, we think that by 2030, 20 million Americans will have plug-in solar. Households will save hundreds of dollars a year on their annual electricity bill. And there will be aggregate savings of up to $9.2 billion a year, again, among household users, and of course, a significant offset. And if you're wondering how much you could save on one of these systems in Maryland, we have an online calculator on our website, which I'll put in the chat. Actually, I don't think I have access to the chat, but anyway, I could share it too. But basically, feel free to go to our website, brightsaver.org/savings calculator, and you can put in your zip code and get an estimate of how much a plug-in solar system would save you. So happy to answer any questions, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate this. I know that was a deep dive for everybody, and this is a relatively new topic. I think we might need to hold questions just in the interest of time. Are you able to stay online until the end? Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I can see some questions popping up in the Zoom chat. Andrea, our fellow's online, so I'll just tell those folks to hold their questions. But thank you so, so much. Okay, I am going to introduce our next speaker. So this is going to switch gears a little bit here. Just a curiosity out of a show of hands, how many people in this room have heard about community choice aggregation, also known as CCA or CCE, Community Choice Energy? Not a one. Stan, you might have some work cut out for you. Okay. So just to, this is kind of a solar tangential topic, but extremely related to our overarching topic here of clean energy. So Stan is the chief of the Energy, Climate, and Compliance Division in Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. In this role, he manages a range of programs related to energy, climate, and sustainability issues, as well as enforcement of the county's environmental laws. And he will be giving us an update on the progress of the county CCA. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Dory. Good evening, everybody. As she said, I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit different than the topic we've talked about so far. So I want to say three things up front. One, what I'm going to talk about will not affect anything you're hearing about solar. You can get balcony solar, you can get community solar, you can put solar on your rooftop. What I'm talking about won't affect that at all. Those arrangements you have will remain in place even after this community choice aggregation program starts. Second thing is this program won't be available for several years. So I'm going to give you sort of preview information. You'll get a lot more information about it, and you will have options when this program starts. You can choose to continue to do exactly what you're doing today, or you can participate in the community aggregation program, which again, I'll give you a little more information about as we go forward here. So this is a background and update, a lot of background it sounds like, because people aren't that familiar with it. So why is the county pursuing community choice aggregation? In general terms, the CCA would allow the county to act as a retail supplier for residents and small businesses in the county. Some of you may have signed up for a retail supplier in the past, and instead of getting your electricity from, say, Pepco, which is your utility that delivers your electricity, you went to a retail supplier because you could get a cheaper supply, or you could get a supply that had a higher renewable content. So the county, the CCA is kind of a flavor of retail supply. Instead of getting it from a retail supplier, you get it from the aggregation program that is formed by the county. And you'll get more information about this and have options. Unlike retail supply, which actually has kind of disappeared in Maryland, I won't go into that topic because of some legislative actions a couple years ago. This will be what's called an opt-out program. Every resident in the county and small business in the county will automatically be enrolled in the CCA program, but you can opt out at any time for no fee. And again, you'll get more information about your options there about how to opt out. So don't worry that we're going to put you into something that you're locked into and put you something into that you don't know anything about, because we'll be providing a lot more information. In theory, the CCA will allow the county to offer electricity that's competitive with the utility electricity supply, or even cheaper than the utility supply, but will have a higher amount of renewable energy in it. So that's why the county is pursuing this program. And we also may be able to offer a variety of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and what are called demand response programs that you could opt into. These will not be mandatory. You could opt into these things. So things like if you wanted us to come do an energy efficiency improvement on your home, you could opt into that service, and we would provide that. Now, that would definitely be a down-the-road program. That wouldn't be available at the start, but that's something more advanced CCAs are doing around the country. Just a little information about utilities. Many of you might not know that Montgomery County is actually served by 3 different utilities. Tacoma Park is served by Pepco. Most of the county is served by Pepco. The northeast portion of the county is served by BGE. And the northwest portion of the county is served by Potomac Edison. So this has complicated our setting up the CCA program a little bit, because we have to deal with 3 different utility schemes as we set this up. One thing I wanted to point out on this map, see that little sliver of red, which is Pepco Maryland territory up in Howard County. That's a map artifact. Pepco actually doesn't serve Howard County at all. They just serve parts of Montgomery County and parts of Prince George's County. And you can see the numbers there. The bulk of customers in Montgomery County are in PEPCO territory. So I mentioned CCAs have evolved over time. And initially, CCAs were developed by jurisdictions to lower the cost of electricity. And over time, making the supply greener, having more renewable content in the supply became a focus. And now, with increased proliferation of things like rooftop solar and battery storage and EVs, there's more interest in being able to actively control those things with the permission of the customer, so that the community can reduce the total amount of energy it demands, which lowers costs. Those are called demand response programs. And more progressive CCAs are interested in incorporating those demand response programs into the offerings they provide. And again, those are optional services. People don't have to choose to do those things. I'm going to skip this slide here. So there are, right now, for a variety of reasons, we have primarily focused on what's called a REC-based CCA. RECs, renewable energy credits. We would buy our clean energy by buying RECs. Again, that's a detail we won't be able to go into tonight. But there are strong advocates for pursuing more of these demand response programs that I've been talking about, and we're interested in doing that. There's some things we'll have to work out with the Maryland Public Service Commission about which kind of programs we'll offer. But again, that's something we're interested in doing. Don't have enough time to go into the details about that tonight, so I won't do it. But these are my last couple slides here, just to let you know the steps. There are a lot of steps that the state law that enabled us to do this required. There was enabling legislation that had to be passed. That was the first step. That was done in May of 21. And for the next 2.5 years, we worked on regulations that would govern how the program would operate. That took us until February of 24 to get those regulations adopted. Then we had to work on a process about how the utilities would buy their power after the CCA was up. Again, a very technical detail that is not germane to a customer and what that would mean for their service. And then the county had to adopt a local law saying, yes, we want to do this. We want to establish an aggregation program. And that was done in October of last year. We still have some steps to go. We have to draft and publicize what's called an aggregation plan. An aggregation plan is essentially a business plan that describes how the CCA would work. And the Public Service Commission would have to approve that. We have to make it available to all potential customers so they can read it. I will tell you, it's a very technical document. And so when we publicize that aggregation plan, what we'll also publicize is what I call a glossy brochure that explains in very plain detail how the project will, or how the program would work. But it won't have some key details, like it won't tell you how much the electricity will cost that the CCA will provide you compared to the utilities. That won't come until we're just about ready to launch the program, and that's this last bullet here. We'll provide what's called an opt-out notice to all customers. And the opt-out notice will give you first of all, it'll give you prices. It'll say, here's what the CCA electricity cost will be per kilowatt hour. Here's what the utility will charge you. And now you can decide. Do you want to take the CCA offer? Do you want to stay in your utility? And you can opt out in various ways if you want to stay with the utility. We're hoping that our prices are better than the utility, so you'll want to stay with the CCA. But again, at any time, you'll be able to opt out of the CCA and go back to the utility if you want, or a retail supplier if that happens to still be available. And I don't know, Dory, if you're going to make these slides available to people, or I've got a lot of links to things if you want to learn more about it. If you're really into the legal side of things, you can look at the law and the regulations. There's a couple of podcasts that talk about things that CCAs are doing that are interesting. It's called the Volts podcast. They talk about a lot of energy and electricity issues, and you can get some more information about how CCAs work. But that's a real quick overview of CCA. Again, you will be hearing more about it, and you will have options, and it will not affect anything you want to do with respect to solar.
That was very succinct. Thank
I
you.
tried to be succinct. I wanted to
Very
stay on the
efficient.
schedule.
Any questions for Stan? Yeah, please come up to the mic.
So you said it would be several years before this
Yes.
would be available?
Yes.
And what is the delay? Is it the plan that will take so long?
It's a combination of things. So we have to develop the aggregation plan, get that approved by the commission. That will take some time. And then the procurement of electricity by the CCA will mirror what the utilities do when they buy power. Because we want to be price competitive, and the best way to be price competitive is follow their process with a few tweaks so that the CCA electricity will be lower priced than the utilities. And the utilities, because of state law, purchase their power over a 2-year period. So because they take a 2-year period to purchase, we will take a 2-year period to purchase. So that's part of that time frame that's built into the
Thanks.
process.
Thank you so much. Well, folks, we are extremely on schedule. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if this resonated, but this is a huge deal that Montgomery County is undertaking this. There are not that many states in the U.S. that are pursuing CCA, probably because it's so complicated. But having the default be clean energy is monumental in terms of climate action. So just like hold tight, because I think a groundswell is coming with that effort. Okay, so we're gonna change things up a little bit, and our last portion will be a moderated panel. So I'd like to invite our Chesapeake Climate and Conservation Corps Fellow, Sophia Gibby, who goes by Gibby, who will be moderating this panel. I'd also like to invite our panelists. We have Brian Levi, who is a local homeowner. Hello. We have Neil Teague, who is with Stout & Teague, a local business, property owner. And we have Brian Bomer, who's with the Department of Permitting Services. Please come up to the stage.
Okay, thank you guys for so much for sticking through this session. I'm really excited for the people here on the panel to be here. I'll give some brief bios and then we'll get started with questions. So Brian Levy is sitting to everyone's left on the end of the table there. Brian and his family just moved to Tacoma Park last year and completed a full house electrification and solar rehab project. Brian has worked as a solar consultant for the past 14 years. And specifically focused on bringing solar to affordable housing. He's also worked at the U.S. Department of Energy, DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and once had a cool side gig promoting efficient micro-housing. So he's here to join us with a resident perspective and a very expert solar perspective. Neil Teague is there on everyone's right on the end of the table. Mr. Teague has been active in Washington real estate since 1978. His work at Stout & Teague includes project acquisition, development, and renovation for the company's own account. He also heads the firm's leasing management, and advisory work for clients including Metro, World Bank, Resources for the Future, National Wildlife Federation, and other Washington area institutions. Mr. Teague received a BA in architecture from Yale University and an MBA in finance and real estate from the Wharton School at UPenn. He is a licensed real estate broker in Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Mr. Teague has also served on the board of Southeast Fairfax Development Corps and was president of Tacoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority for over 20 years. And then in the middle there is Brian Bomer. Brian is the Sustainability, Energy, and Mechanical Manager for the Department of Permitting Services in Montgomery County. In his current role, Brian is responsible for the creation, implementation, and dissemination of new energy and sustainability initiatives, programs, and commercial construction codes. He graduated from Ohio State University, and Brian has a robust background in building science, sustainability consulting, and electric utility program development. His programmatic accomplishments range from code adoption, customized marketing, net zero program creation, data analytics, rating system development, public speaking, and community involvement. So as you can tell, all three of these panelists are very different, but each having a really robust perspective of solar energy. So I'll start with a question for Brian, the Brian to the left there. And I'm curious, I guess, for a typical homeowner or condo owner or tenant who is probably curious about solar energy but overwhelmed by the number of options, do you recommend certain first steps? What do you think they should start thinking about from the get-go if they had to start this from scratch?
Sure thing. Hey, can everyone hear me okay? Great. Well, thanks again for having me here. And I'll talk about it as a homeowner, and then I can switch to as a tenant or a renter. So I think we all heard about the Switch Together program a little bit earlier today. So I'm here as like a real person who went through that program. And so the first step when I was considering solar for my home was to call them up, because I knew Anya Schoolman and the Neighborhood Sun folks who've done great work around the region for years. So I knew of the program. I called them up, and they did the initial analysis, but I wasn't fully sold on it, right? So I did my own research, and some of you may have heard of the website Energy Sage. So it's basically like an aggregation tool for a lot of different solar installers. And so I put my house address and got quotes through there, and I compared those with the quote I was getting through the Switch Together program. And so I can credibly say that if you go through Switch Together, it's a cheaper option than the other quotes I was getting. I think I saved probably about maybe $3,000 on my system versus the other quotes I was getting. So no-brainer. Switch Together is a great program, and they of course have in this area they have a kind of a vetted vendor, which is Solar Energy World, and they came out and did the scoping and did everything basically. Made it pretty simple. I think if you're not a homeowner, right, I think we talked about some of the options already, so I won't spend too much time on that. But I think, Solar United Neighbors, they have options. You can call up Arcadia Power, Common Energy. There's a bunch of community power providers out there. So I'd encourage you to explore options through them. So.
Awesome. I'll move on to a question for Brian in the middle, Brian Vomer. If a homeowner or developer wants a smooth permitting process for their solar project, what can they do upfront to avoid any headaches in the process?
No, it's actually a pretty smooth process right now. I would say a few years ago it wasn't the case. So, as Brian mentioned, contacting the company that you're interested in working with, they're going to walk you through most of it, to be honest. Having all of the paperwork prepared is critical. So here in Tacoma Park, there has to be a letter from the city that says you can move forward with any work done at the house. So make sure you have that letter ready. Make sure you understand who your utility provider is. As Stan showed, there's 3 utility providers here in the county. And most importantly, understand the condition of your roof. And so there'll be a letter that has to follow the permit application. It's called an attestation of the roof structure. So having somebody take a look at that is pretty important. Again, the company will take care of that for you. We offer a couple different services for getting a permit in Montgomery County. Our newest and most exciting, and the reason that I'm probably here, is what we call our e-solar program. And that is an online application that's an instant approval if you use Solar App Plus. So Solar App Plus is a third-party provider. They'll actually take a look at your project, you scope your project, the specifics of it, and issue a certificate. That certificate gets you an instant permit, so that can speed things up. I also use Solar Energy World in my house. I actually, in the quote, required them to use Solar App or the e-solar service here, and it definitely shaved a substantial amount of time off the installation of my property.
Nice. Okay, that was really helpful. Okay, and then I have one question for Neil. Let's see. When you're advising building owners or developers, because Neil works more with commercial buildings, how do you think about the trade-off between owning a solar system outright versus using something like a power purchase agreement, PPA? What kind of considerations are there when you're going between, and owning a system versus a PPA?
I certainly haven't done a detailed analysis, but I do have strong opinions about that. Because when you place a 20-year asset on your roof, you're constraining a lot of things. So in a commercial setting, not a home setting, I feel very strongly the property owner should own the asset. Not because purchase power isn't a very good way to finance it, but it's simply gives you flexibility. You need to do a new roof, you want to put a cell site on it, frankly, you want to tear down your building. There's all sorts of things that you just don't have the flexibility with the purchase power agreement. We have looked into them in other contexts, and I think they can work. They're particularly useful if you had a nonprofit owner of an asset, because the tax credits, many of which are going away, but certainly some of the tax credits that a nonprofit owner may not be able to use, the purchase power provider can use, and so you'll get a better financial outcome than if they buy it themselves.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was great. I think I'll ask a general question that might be more oriented towards, maybe everyone, but I'm curious about the difference between electrification and putting solar in, and do you do those simultaneously? Brian can probably speak to his own home experience, but how do you go about, if you have an old home or you live in an old multifamily building, what kind of incentives are there for electrification versus solar? How do you match those? And how do you go about assessing the entire system rather than just the solar?
I can take a stab at that as a homeowner. So I came at it kind of because I've been in this game for a while. When I bought the house, the first thing I wanted to do is like electrify everything, right? Which is kind of the state-of-the-art approach now. Get out all the gas appliances, which aren't great to have combustion appliances in your house in general, just for health and safety. I've got a 5-year-old at home, so that was a priority. But more fundamentally, I just wanted to electrify everything, because if you electrify everything, then you can green everything, right? You're not burning any fossil fuels. So my perspective was basically like electrify everything and then try to cover all those electrical loads with solar, right? And so the nice thing about being in Montgomery County, which I learned, I've been in the district for years. When I came here, I had to learn about all these programs, but this county is amazing. There are all these great programs set up. So one, we talked about Switch Together, so that's the solar side. But I want to do a little shout out here for Electrify Montgomery County, Electrify MC. So they've done a similar thing to a little bit similar to the group purchasing model. They've pre-vetted contractors, right, who will come in and you fill out a simple form, set up an energy audit. They come out. In this case, it's Elysian Energy is the contractor, right? It's been kind of pre-vetted. They'll come to your house. They do blower door tests. They do all the energy modeling. They do a full manual J calculation that looks at how your house is using energy and the loads, everything. And then they come back to you with a whole list of recommended measures, right? Energy efficiency measures. So insulation, replacing combustion appliances with heat pumps, maybe taking out that gas stove and putting in an electric stove. So they did that. They laid out all the costs, and then crucially, because it's just complicated, if you're a homeowner, it's just complicated to figure all this out, especially if you're not coming from an energy efficiency background, right? So there's all these incentives out there. There's utility incentives, and then there's Montgomery County incentives. And this one contractor basically navigates all that stuff for you, right? So let's talk about a heat pump. I had a natural gas furnace, right, in my house. So I wanted to do heat pump. That's kind of like the wave of the future, right? Electrify. Heats and cools using electricity. Electrify Montgomery County has a $1,000 to $2,500 incentive for heat pumps. So Elysian can access that, right? Separately, and confusingly, frankly, the utilities also have a program for heat pumps, which is called Empower Maryland. So through that program, you can get up to $3,500 on a heat pump. And then, of course, last year, there were all the IRA incentives, which are now long gone, RIP. We don't talk about those anymore. Mm-hmm. But Elysian was able to bring all those incentives together. So with the $15,000 heat pump install came down to around 10. 10K. So it's pretty substantial savings. And they installed it or subbed it out. I don't know how that worked, but from my perspective as a homeowner, they just kind of did it all and dealt with all the incentives and just passed along the savings to me. So, and they also offered financing as well as 0% financing. So I'm just still sitting on my 0% loan for like a year, right, which is frankly worth another couple $1,000s, right, of avoided interest payments, et cetera. So that worked out really well. And so all those incentives, they also have incentives to heavy up. Sometimes you have to increase your amp service to your household in order to accommodate the increased electrical loads. So I went from like 100 amp service to, in my case, 400 amps, which is a little bit crazy, but that's another story. But I got like a 5K discount there. I go on and on. All the incentives they deal with. So that's a shout out to those programs and the folks who manage them.
It's a commercial grade.
I have a carriage house and I have these grand plans. So anyway, and I want to, do plug-in cars and stuff. So
I can talk a little bit about the sort of the policy and then the regulations that are coming here in Montgomery County around electrification. Also, I want to add a question before. If you're unfortunate like myself to be in an HOA, you also have to get an HOA approval letter before you put solar on your house, which blows my mind, but you have to do it usually, and so just be prepared for that. And then, of course, the panel size, make sure it's big enough. So from a regulatory and a policy perspective, Montgomery County has a climate action plan, which I'm assuming some people have at least heard of here in the county. And then additional on top of the climate action plan, several years ago, Bill 1322, Building Decarbonization, was passed into law, which it's a little bit of a tricky regulation. It essentially set a deadline for my agency to provide language for an electrification code for new construction, and that is to be delivered in 2027. So we have a draft of that ready, and we'll be submitting that January, February of 2027. But essentially between the Bill 1322 and the Climate Action Plan, we have very progressive and aggressive goals to electrify and be net zero for new construction. And so we are working tirelessly at the department to try and figure out how off-the-shelf products and regulations can get us to those targets. And right now, what we have in place, at least in commercial, is electrification ready. So if you build a new structure over 5,000 square feet and you decide to put any sort of gas end appliance in that building, you also have to have the electrical infrastructure alongside it, so that if the building owner decided to, through the Building Energy Performance Standard or just through their own desires, wanted to fuel switch, everything is ready for them to do that, and it can be a quick and easy fix. Now, in about 2 years, buildings will have to be all electric, no questions asked, with exemptions such as commercial kitchens, biomed, and emergency backup power. And so we're working through that process now, and we should be having some interesting discussions and legislation coming out soon on how that process will unfold over the next few years.
Neil, did you want to speak any to the electrification question as well?
I'm not really, we certainly worked to be ahead of the curve, but we're typically making decisions in frankly, an incremental basis, just to see if the opportunity arises, we'll go for it, but we don't have a program to get ahead of the curve, so to speak. These older buildings, again, as Brian just said, we're mostly all electric in our building here in Tacoma Park, but we still have a gas backup for our heat pump system, and that's something that we'd look at for the future.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add, and I can't believe I forgot this, but we are the fortunate recipients of a $10 million Department of Energy grant to advance these codes to net zero and electrification. It's a little tricky right now with the political environment that we're in today, but as of this morning, we're still moving forward and the money's still coming. And so while we won't be providing any incentives directly to consumers on electrification or net zero energy, what we will be providing is education, outreach, and what is called a technical assistance program. And so this is really designed for commercial construction. If a building is struggling with meeting the complex requirements of the energy code, they can go to the Green Bank, ask for assistance, and receive up to $50,000 in direct design and MEP efforts to help try to get their design into compliance. And so that's all in the pipeline right now. We actually launched the Technical Assistance Program pilot about 2 weeks ago. We have 2 projects coming through, and that is self-funded through DPS. We have $1 million, and we are working through the first few projects to try and get them up to speed on the process. So it's working out pretty well.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. We have just a few more minutes before we open it up for Q&A for the audience, and I kind of wanted to leave on a happy note. So what you all three can answer briefly, but what gives you optimism right now about the clean energy transition?
Well, so, having to navigate the environment that we're in today, I don't think this is happy at all, but when we see energy pricing surging like we are today with fossil fuels in specific, it's funny where rebranding can happen quickly. So what we used to call energy efficiency, we now call energy performance. What was called net zero energy is now called resiliency. So it's funny that while hot topics and terms can be touchy, fundamentally, all of those needs are still there. Call them what you want. And so it's good to see that people still have interest, that the tax incentive goes away, but we still see hundreds of solar applications coming into the county. So there's a demand for a different reason than it was 2 years ago. So that, like I said, I don't want to wish anything upon the Middle East right now, but it's interesting how it still shows up as a need and a demand to be energy efficient, or sorry, energy high performer.
Yes. Yeah, I guess I would echo that maybe a slightly different way, which is say all those IRA incentives that were taken away, especially on the residential level. I guess from a climate change perspective, like they're very quickly being replaced in terms of incentivizing the green transition by higher energy prices. That's not great news, right? As a homeowner, you don't want higher energy prices, but it also is a great demand to get energy efficiency deployed, to get solar deployed. And, as a non-self-interested homeowner, and looking at the broader picture, that gives me some level of hope. So I don't know if that's positive enough, but that's what I got.
Definitely, yeah.
I would say, again, the incentives have started to go away, but what they did achieve is getting costs to the point where there's a business case to be made. We certainly feel like we've always been forward-looking, and we're certainly in favor of energy conservation and conserving the environment. But in the end, from a business decision, we made the decision based on the fact that the cost was going to generate a return for us. And you're right, we modeled electricity costs in our business case at probably 22, 23 cents a kilowatt hour, all in, including, both purchased and unfortunately, we just bought 2 years of green power, and it was about 25.5 cents. So our costs have gone up, but the savings that our solar system that we're putting in our building will have that much greater return.
So I don't know about you, but how much was your electric bill last billing period? Mine was $8. So that's a really positive thing too.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no.
And that's with the electric car. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, my system, I've only been in the house for like 9 months, but I was sharing before that at like what it's producing at 21 cents a kilowatt hour, it's actually probably a little higher than that.
Yeah,
but say it's like $1,250 of savings so far over 9 months. And then you add in the Maryland SREX. I think we were talking about SREX before. So it's another $240. Now, a special shout out to anyone that happens to live close to the DC line, as I fortunately apparently do. If you're still a Pepco Maryland client, right? But if you are close to the DC line and you're on the DC grid, then you get the DC SREX, which are way higher than the Maryland SREX. It's like $400 or $330 after the brokerage fees versus $40. So that happens to be a major incentive. If you're near the DC line, you can go online and look to see where the grid lines extend. Solar is a complete no-brainer. It's something you should already do anyway, but if you're close to DC, it's like, do it.
Nice. That was a good note to end on. But we do have some time for Q&A from the audience. So if there are any questions in the audience, either online or in person, I'm not exactly sure how to see the online ones, but
We do have some online questions, but maybe if there are people wanting to ask questions over there in person, we can go to those first.
Hello, Andrea. Thank you for this is Andrea, who is our sustainability fellow. Yes, so for the folks in the audience, please step up to the mic. Andrea, I think we can take one of the online questions first. And just as a recap, we have all of our previous presenters, Sukrit with the Switch Together program, Natalia with Neighborhood Sun's Community Solar program, Mark McCarthy with the plug-in solar information, and Stan, who spoke about the CCA. So this would be open question time for any of those topics.
Awesome. So the first question, I think it's for Natalia. Can you explain why generating more credit back to the utilities, the resident can either zero out their bill or get more credit for the future since the resident is generating excess energy?
I'm sorry, I don't
This is
understand the
in
question.
relation to community solar, I believe.
She can hear you if you talk in the mic. Yeah.
But no, I don't understand what she's asking.
Can you repeat the question, Andrea?
Okay. Can you explain why generating more credit back to the utilities, the resident can't either zero out their bill or get more credit for the future since the resident is generating excess energy?
I mean, you actually can like during the summer when your share of the solar farm is generating more energy, sometimes your bill, like you actually don't pay anything to Pepco, for example, and then if you have any excess credits, then those are banked and roll over to the next month. So it is possible to have a bill that it's zero, if that's what she's asking.
I believe it is.
Okay. And actually, I think Pepco and all the utilities actually changed the way they are applying the credits. So before, they would apply the credits that were generated the previous month, like all of the credits. And right now, what they're doing is they're applying the credits based on what your usage was that month. So if your usage was like, I don't know, $200, then they apply $200 in credits, and then they bank the rest if your share generated more. So you pay, I mean, you get more savings on your bill that month.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can
Thank you.
take
I think
one
that
from
clarified.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I think we'll take one from the audience, then we'll pop back into the online question, Andrea.
This is for Brian. We also went solar last year. We're in the historic district, and we were able to take advantage of the Maryland homeowner tax credit and the Montgomery County historic preservation tax credit. Can you talk to either of those? Because I think it's something that a lot of people tend not to know about.
Yes, I can talk to it, but I'm curious first, are you talking about, did you get tax credits for the solar aspect?
So the Maryland historic tax, we had to put on both a new roof and also solar. The Maryland State Historic Tax Credit Program provided 20% credit for both of those. On the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Tax Credit, that provided a 25% credit on the roof. For both of those, there was a certain amount of pre-certification that was necessary and a fair amount of paperwork. But again, I don't know if you want to,
Yep.
talk about that.
Sure. So I'll talk to the latter because in part of this comprehensive retrofit we did on the house electrification, we also put in new windows because they were like old 1930s windows, and we were in the historic district, so we had to go through this process, which our window installer helped, but you're along for the ride, right? You got to put some paperwork together as well and submit that to the historic Preservation Commission, if I'm getting the term right. But your reward for that in the historic district is when they approve it, then later on, you can then apply for this 25% historic preservation tax credit. So that $30,000 window job, which is outrageous, right? For like somewhat historically accurate windows, you are basically getting a 25% property tax credit, which you can apply that year, or if your taxes aren't that high, over multiple years, up to 5 years into the future. So that was, I didn't even realize that when we did it. I should have, if I had, I would have sold my wife more quickly on the, on the window rehab, but that's a great benefit for if you're in the historic area. And just another quick side note, you don't have to live in a historic property. I don't know if you saw our house up there. Our house is considered a non-contributing resource, which means it ain't historic. But they still make you go through the historic review process, and as a result, you can still benefit from this tax credit. So.
Yeah, we've got a similar question in the audience, so go ahead.
Hi. Oh, can I hear me? Okay, hi. My name is Isaiah Wool. I'm actually with Uprise Solar, so we're a solar installer in DC. And my question was pertaining to, we've had people in, I got it written down for you. We have homeowners in the Montgomery County Historic District, specifically in Chevy Chase Village, that have had trouble going through the historic district. Is there anything us as installers can do, or is there any advice that we can give them that'll help push those things through?
Yeah, so I learned all this going through the process. I'm not an expert, but one example. So just like for the window replacements, the solar, to get the solar permit, they had to go through historic review because we're in a historic district. What I learned through that process, because I saw all the paperwork, is that the Historic Preservation Commission, sorry if I'm getting the name wrong, but they have like this basic mandate, which they cite in their review process, that says they need to prioritize the installation of solar in historic areas. So they basically refer to that and they say, stamp it, approved. So I had no issues whatsoever getting the solar.
What was the name of that you just said?
What
was the stamp? What was the seal of approval?
Whoever does that stamping at the Historic Preservation Commission, there's some guidance there that says they should prioritize solar. So
okay, thank you so much.
I'm happy to share my permit application, everything where it has the language. So just follow up with me later.
Definitely, thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more online question and then probably have time for one more in person.
We got
A little
few
bit more.
minutes,
Yeah, that's true. Andrea, if you'd like to shuffle us one more.
Yeah, so there is a question about what's the impact on a roof to install panels? Example, do they drill holes, remove shingles, mount supports? What does a roof look like if you were to remove the panels? Are there degradations to the integrity of the roof surface, the structure, or weatherproofing due to holes?
Good question.
Was that targeted at a particular presenter?
Maybe, yeah, the people who have installed panels on the roof. Brian, perhaps, maybe he can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, from a permitting perspective, you still have to get a permit if you're going to take your panels off to re-roof and put them back on. So just be aware of that. And that's why it's important to know the age of your roof when you do the first installation. If you think you're going to be doing a replacement, you should prioritize a replacement first. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about that, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's like the first question. I'm also wear another hat as a solar developer, so it's always the first question we get. What about roof penetrations? Obviously, if you have a flat roof, you can do ballast, which are just like weight blocks, and there's usually no penetrations. That's ideal. But anyone living in a house probably has a gabled roof. So then you're talking about penetrations. How many penetrations is a great question to ask your solar installers. The good news is, like, over the last 20 years, the technology has gotten way better, or in terms of how you do those penetrations. So there's no actual real penetration into the roof. I mean, there is, but there's like a pitch pocket, or there's these systems that basically are pretty foolproof and result in very, very low leakage rates. So, but great question. You should ask their installer what system they're using, do a little bit of your due diligence on that, or maybe talk to Neighborhood Sun, talk to somebody knowledgeable about this. So,
just also on for metal roofs, so standing seam metal roof, there are clips that are a market available that clip onto the standing seam, and then the panel clips to that. We had some internal interpretation issues over the last few years, and we were denying those projects. We've cleared all that up with the International Code Council, with our internal engineers, and we're now allowing standing seam metal roof clips to come through permitting with no problem. So that's another option for a roof type.
And I'd say if you're replacing your roof and you can afford it, and you want to
Start
do,
there.
and you can do solar in your site, like you've got enough sun and stuff, go standing seam. I've done that on another property of mine, and it's awesome because there's no penetrations, and they can be installed and removed and replaced very quickly. So.
I just wanted to reiterate the like final part of that question. Do you have to re-roof after, if you like decide to take out the solar panel and not replace it? Do you typically re-roof afterwards?
So what? Talk about the timeline again.
Like if they, for some reason, for whatever reason, need to take the solar off permanently, do you have to like then re-roof entirely, or is it you patch it? Do you know?
Oh, sure, yeah. If you have to take off the solar system,
Right.
Permanently, and you're not going to reinstall it, then you'd want to get your like a roofer out there to basically like do the patch work.
Cool.
I will say, as part of the Solar Energy World contract, this is something I dove into them with a bit, and they actually offer as part of the contract, they'll come and uninstall the system and then reinstall it, deinstall, reinstall, they'll do that as part of the contract, which usually is like a lot of money out of someone's pocket. In this case, it's theirs to do that. So that way, if you have a roof that's not like brand new or only a couple, maybe it's 10 years old, 15 years old, I would consider signing a contract with them to do that, because they'll come out and pay the cost when it's time to re-roof.
And they have a window on that. It's part of their warranty. So if you exceed the window, then you're on the hook for that yourself.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
We can take some more questions from the audience. If you want to see a cool non-penetration ballast system, please come check out our photos from the library project over here in the corner after.
I was wondering, it's probably a question for you, Mr. Bomer. When the energy audit people come out, if you go that route, do they give you advice as to what type of roof works best? Because we're in a situation where we're about to replace part of our roof. And I'm glad you mentioned the standing seam metal, because that's what we wanted to do. And we'd heard a horror story about how Montgomery permitting made it impossible for a Tacoma Park person.
Yeah. No more horror stories.
Yeah.
Love stories.
So the top part of our house is mostly flat and it's TPO. But then we've got other sections that are shingle, and so we were going to do standing metal and wanted solar. So and then heard that story. So anyway, I was just wondering, how do we get sound advice as to which type of material would be the best for supporting a solar installation?
I mean, first and foremost, you always find a contractor that you can trust and that you have a good relationship with, and they should be able to guide you. One thing I can't do is get into material selections and product selections. I will say, though, and Brian can probably echo this, that the standing seam is a very good option if you can afford it. It comes at a premium. We have remedied the standing seam issue, so you're good to go. And if anybody gives you any hard time, you can find my name everywhere online. I'll answer my phone and I'll fix it. Again, if you're in an HOA or if you're in a historical area, you might have some issues on material. So always check your local rules, regulations, and zoning requirements to make sure you're within compliance. And from that point forward, it helps you kind of narrow down the decisions.
Okay, yeah, we're not historical, we're not special, no HOAs.
I'm jealous. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question for Neil? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut off Tommy Wah, but you were, I think, contemplating going solar on your commercial building in Tacoma Park for quite some time. What was it that moved the needle for you?
One of it was, the perception that there was higher electric costs coming. Obviously, the expiration of the tax credits focused the decision, but this is something we've been sitting on for several years. And frankly, the Tacoma Park grant, which we participated in last year, took the return from kind of marginal to, okay, this works. So we certainly appreciated the support that the city gave in the solar grant program that we were able to take advantage of. And that really caused us to say, now's the time.
I have a plug-in solar question. I don't know if Mark's still on the call or not, but I was just wondering if you foresee any issues of homeowners not realizing, how many panels they can get for plug-in, and like, I don't know, overloading their electrical system or something like that. Because from my understanding, you don't need a permit for some of the states who have approved. So I wasn't sure if there are any protections around, I guess, like consumer education and buying too many plug-in solar panels.
Yes, I'm still here. I will say that with this new underwriter laboratory lab certification, all those concerns will basically be addressed. One, as I mentioned, for those larger systems where electrical work applies, you will have to have an electrician come and do that work. And so in order to do that also, technically, I think, I'm not familiar with county restrictions, but you'll probably need an electrical permit for that. So it will need to be properly installed. And as I mentioned, those larger systems will have a proprietary plug. So even if somebody wanted to install a bunch of these and plug them into a ton of outlets, they wouldn't be able to, because you would need a professional to put that outlet in for you. And by doing so, also validating that the circuit it's plugging into is able to withstand a load from that system. So that's sort of some of the protections. And then even then, the new restrictions and with the forthcoming systems that will come to market, they will have hardware and software elements built in that will shut them off in case there's any safety risks. So if the system itself, regardless of the circuit it's plugged into, detects that that the circuit is being overloaded, then they will have what is called a PCS, or power control system, that will automatically throttle it off to prevent any overloading of that circuit. So those are some of the safeguards that have been introduced. The other thing is just that with the systems that are being deployed now anyway, they come with very strict manufacturer instructions. And so people are told how they can set up and what the safe locations to set it up for and what they need to do to be compliant. And of course, if the consumer is not compliant with that, then they're liable because they have not followed the manufacturing instructions. But with this forthcoming restriction, that's really what addresses all of those safety concerns. And there will be some restrictions on being able to plug multiple ones of these in the house. So we're not entirely sure what those will look like yet until those systems are available, but you will not be able to plug more than one of these systems onto the same circuit. So you will be required to have separate circuits for these. Your breaker panel will need to have separate breakers for each one of these lines, and you will have to prove that your home can actually handle the production from two of these systems. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, but I think a lot of those will be addressed. And I also believe that, especially with the law passing, now is a good time to work with the state and city governments to start building some information portals, web pages, et cetera, to prepare people, because people are already buying these and we want to make sure that they do so in a safe manner. So having some information sheets and online resources, in addition to whatever retailers are obligated to tell folks, it will be important. It's the same thing kind of like as installing a dryer. You have to get information from the retailer you buy it from, and they also have legal responsibilities to share information on safety.
Thank you, Mark. Andrea, was there any other question in the online chat?
Yes, and these are about plug-in panels, actually, Mark, if you don't mind answering two more. The first one is, what is an approximate cost for plug-in panels? The German cost is $500 to $600.
Yeah, so for example, we estimate that in states that pass legislation, the costs can already go down by about 50%, and this is the reality we saw in Utah. So there is a manufacturer like EcoFlow that sells product just in Utah now, because that is the state that passed the legislation first, and they're selling systems for as low as $1,200 for smaller systems in Utah. So we are definitely seeing prices right now that are double or more what it is for Europe, but we anticipate that those prices will go down astronomically over the next 2 years. It also very much depends on the size of the system and whether you are including a battery. If you include a battery, the upfront cost is a lot higher, but oftentimes your payback will be better because you are making sure you have almost full utilization of all of the solar that those panels are producing.
And should I continue with the next one?
Yeah, I think that'll be our last question, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Are there state, county, or local grants available for eventual plug-in solar panels? In my condominium, an electrician would have to install an outdoor safety plug?
Yeah, that's what we're working on. I've been talking to states and cities across the country. I've spoken to a bunch of institutions in DC. We've had interactions with Maryland Energy Administration as well, and Virginia. Since the law passed a couple weeks ago, we've already been having calls with counties like Alexandria, Arlington, to try to chart a way forward. And I think it's very locational. There are some municipalities that have funding programs for low-income citizens or just rebate programs in general for all folks that want this, but it's been very location specific. And we have advanced a lot on pilot conversations in places like Massachusetts, DC, Colorado, California, places where there are bills in place that will likely pass. So we hope so. And I also think because of the price point, for a lot of people, this will be similar to buying a new electronic or buying a consumer appliance. And so what we anticipate is eventually they'll be able to go to a Home Depot and buy one of these. And in that case, it'll probably look like when you buy another expensive appliance. If you don't necessarily have all the money up front, there might be a 12 to 24 month repayment scheme with no interest, etc. And I think that's what we're looking at because of the price points of these and how people will finance these. But definitely interested in looking at mainstreaming plug-in solar into more public programming.
That sounds like a great transition to my final call to action. But before I go into that, just want to have a final round of applause for all of our presenters this evening. You guys are welcome to stay up there. I'm almost done. All right. Yes, as promised, my call to action. So I assume that we have a fair amount of Tacoma Park residents in the room. I have one slide here. I'll call out one more program, but we have a grant program that can fund solar, in case you didn't know. It is called the Green Homes and Businesses Grant. This is the grant that Neil was also just referring to that his business received to help with their project. Solar is a qualifying project type. I dare say after some internal conversations, plug-in solar will probably be a qualifying project type. Batteries are also covered under this too, although we have not gotten a battery application yet to my knowledge. But I could be wrong about that. But it is a competitive grant. It is an income tiered grant. We do have flyers on this outside. Please, come talk to us. I will say it did just close for this cycle. However, budget pending, we expect to be opening this in the next fiscal year. So just want you to take advantage of that. And oh, by the way, it is stackable with Montgomery County programs. So if you're going to look into Montgomery Electrify MC that Brian was talking about and heavily endorsing, this is stackable with that. As well as state grants. So yeah, and if you are a multifamily resident, we have a separate program, I don't have a slide about this, that is called the Multifamily Building Improvement Grant. This is on the property owner to apply. It is for buildings that are under 30 units, but we know that this represents a ton of our residents in Tacoma Park, and we just want folks to be aware of that as well. That also just closed, but we'll be opening for a new cycle in the coming fiscal year. So in closing, I would just really like to thank you for spending a good deal of time on this evening with us, leaning into this topic. There's no time like the present. You heard it from the presenters that even though, RIP, the IRA, and the incentives we were able to talk about in past versions of this event, there are still things out there to make this affordable, and it's still an extremely important topic. We are very eager to help. I think the presenters are eager to help. So let's go solar. And thank you, everyone. Please join us. We've got some swag, like I said, hats, sunglasses, lip balm. Come take them. They're in the hallway. And thank you so much.